Hi, I'm Michelle Bege with a look at what's happening in Latin America now. But first, our news trivia. Brazil's soccer legend Pelé is buried in which city? We'll have the answer later. A new wave of anti-government protests in Peru turned deadly this week. Groups of protesters clashed with security forces on Monday in the southern town of Juliaca, and in the first 24 hours, officials reported at least 17 deaths. The anti-government demonstrators are demanding for new President Dina Boluarte's resignation after the removal and arrest of President Pedro Castillo in early December. Since protests began last month, over 40 people have been killed. A dramatic display in Brazil as roughly 1,500 people were arrested 24 hours after supporters of former President Jair Bolsonaro stormed government buildings in Brasilia. On Sunday, the presidential palace, the congressional building, and the Supreme Court were ransacked by thousands of demonstrators. Authorities say there were no fatalities in the riots, but arrests continue to be made. Recently sworn-in President Lula da Silva promised prosecution in the aftermath. Jair Bolsonaro has denied encouraging the attack. His supporters have been camping outside of the army's headquarters for months, calling for a military intervention because they did not accept the results of the October elections. Brazilian police answered the Supreme Court's call to dismantle the camps after Sunday's riots. And in Mexico, authorities are stepping up security after 19 suspected gang members and 10 members of the military were killed. It happened in a wave of violence that erupted after the 32-year-old son of drug kingpin El CHAPO Guzman was arrested by Mexican authorities. The capture came after hours of tense shootouts with gang members in the state of Sinaloa. Ovidio Guzman, also a drug cartel boss like his father, is set to be extradited to the United States. Days after his arrest, Mexico received U.S. President Joe Biden and Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau for the North American Leaders Summit. Our correspondent Al Baverstock in Mexico has more about this visit and the wave of public unrest.
Mexico's president stated the recapture of Ovidio Guzman had nothing to do with President Biden's visit. It was nevertheless a big win for Mexico. The failed attempt to capture the alleged leader of the Sinaloa cartel in 2019, when criminal forces defeated the Mexican military, was a major embarrassment for López Obrador, during whose presidency the country has seen more than 137,000 murders, the most under any Mexican president. The US is asking for the extradition of Guzman, but a federal judge in Mexico City suspended that order in the days following his arrest, and the country's foreign minister says the legal process for him to stand trial in the US may now take months. Meanwhile, the Mexican authorities will be closely guarding against a prison escape by Guzman as he follows in his father's footsteps.
Colombia's President Gustavo Petro paid his second visit to Venezuelan counterpart Nicolás Maduro since he took office in August of last year. The two countries have reopened trade and made a promise to work together on such things as agriculture initiatives and managing security at the border. Venezuela is a guarantor of ongoing peace negotiations between Colombia's government and the country's last recognized guerrilla group, the National Liberation Army. The visit comes days after the Colombian government has seemed to be at odds with the guerrilla group, as they announced a ceasefire agreement that the ELN combatants later denied. And now let's check out the stories we're following for next week. We're watching the journey of 6 women who began an 8,000-kilometer trek from Peru's capital Lima to French Polynesia using paddle boards. The 6 women are coastal rescue experts. Each will take turns paddling for an average of 4 hours a day. The brave women will be accompanied by a catamaran that will provide them with a chance to rest and give them access to a first aid team. The purpose of the adventure is to raise funds for children with cancer. And now the answer to our news trivia. The answer is B. Pelé's final resting spot overlooks the stadium of his former soccer club, Santos. The 3-time World Cup winner was laid to rest at the Memorial Necrópole Ecuménica Cemetery. The vertical cemetery is recognized by the Guinness Book of World Records as the tallest memorial site on the planet. The remains of the soccer legend arrived at the cemetery after 3 days of national mourning, a 24-hour wake, and a massive funeral procession. Called one of the greatest players of all time, he will be missed, but his talent will live on in the countless video replays of his games shared by fans across the world. And that's it for this week. We'll see you again soon on Latin America Now.